I recently bought a new lathe and a bunch of tools and accessories to go along with it. So now I need a place to keep and organize all these tools. So in this video, I'm going to be making a lathe tool station to keep all that stuff. And I'm going to make it out of some 2x4s and a little bit of aluminum. So first, I'm going to make a bunch of racks to hold all of my lathe chisels. And so to start that, I'm first going to destroy this spade bit. So now I have this spade bit shaped so that it can carve out a semi-sphere to hold the bottom of each of the lathe chisels. And really, I could have just drilled a normal hole and it would have accomplished the same thing, but I thought this would look nicer and it's fun to experiment. That worked out pretty well, but now there's a bunch of holes at the bottom of each of these that I don't really like, so I'm just going to hammer in some nails to fill those. Now I'm just going to do some final shaping to make it look nicer. So I'm going to cut it to the right width that I want, cut an angle on the front edge, cut some curves at the bandsaw, and then just route all the edges. So now I need something to keep the lathe chisels from falling over. So I'm going to make I don't really know what to call it, like I guess a notched fence to keep the lathe chisels from shifting left and right. I don't know what to call it, but I'm making it right now. You'll see what I mean in a minute. That's all the parts that I need for the chisel storage, so now I'm just going to screw all that onto my wall. Next I'm going to make a chest of drawers to hold all the other stuff that I use for my lathe, like, the sandpaper and measuring tools and all the other little tools like that. So first I'm going to cut up some 2x4s into strips that I can then glue up into panels that I can work with a lot easier. Once the glue dried, I sanded off all the squeeze out and flattened out the panel the best I could with the belt sander. And then I decided off camera to send it through the planer a couple times just to make sure everything was consistent. From that panel, I am going to miter together 4 sides that will make the carcass of this cabinet that will hold all the drawers. Oh, and I decided to carve out the top of the cabinet to make like a tray that can hold all my tools and stuff when I don't feel like putting them away. So like if I'm in the middle of a project and I just need to set something down real quick, I can set it on top of the chest of drawers without worrying it's gonna roll off. And the way that I decided to carve out this tray is just using my miter saw. And I've done similar things like this to make small trays and stuff, but this was way different. This was so much material to remove, and it took so much longer than expected. But once I started, it was like I just had to see it through. So it probably took like 20 minutes of just making cuts, and then another 20 minutes of just buffing everything out and sanding it. Once everything was sanded, though, it actually looked pretty good. Now I'm going to joint together the four sides of the cabinet, and to keep everything aligned, I just put in some biscuits. And you'll notice on those two shorter sides of the cabinet, I have a couple of cuts in them, and originally I was going to do something with those, and then I changed my mind. So I ended up, you'll see that those are filled in later in the video. I made this display case a few weeks ago where I reinforced the mitered corners with these like staggered splines. And I like that idea so much that I'm going to do the same thing on this project. So the way that I do that is I use my biscuit joiner, and then I made these spacer blocks that fit into the kerf of the biscuit joiner and help me keep consistent spacing between all the splines. I bought this sheet of aluminum that's 5/32 of an inch, which is the exact same size as the kerf of a biscuit joiner blade. So I'm going to use that to make all the splines that I need for this. And since it's aluminum, it's pretty soft, and I can cut it with my just normal woodworking tools. I probably wouldn't suggest doing that, though, because it's not great for your blades, and it shoots shards of metal at your hands, which is why I usually wouldn't do this, but I was wearing gloves for some of these cuts. I'm fitting all the splines in place, and I just glued these in with CA glue. I really should have used epoxy or something stronger, but I didn't have any on hand, so this is just what I went with. And then I'm using my oscillating tool to cut all these splines flush, or just shy of flush so I don't dig into the wood. This is another on-the-fly, just experiment design change that I'm not sure if I really like. I kind of regret doing this, but I decided to use a wire brush to remove all the softwood, paint over that, and then sand over that. So then all the places that had the softwood are now black and just leaves the grain pattern of the hardwood. And I did not really like this, especially not with the black paint. I ended up using the wire brush to remove all the black paint again and then filling that in with a lighter, less contrast brown paint. And I like that a lot better. I'm still not sure if I like it at all, though. I probably should have just left it alone. I don't know. It was kind of a cool experiment, and I think it would look better on a different project, but let me know. Do you like the black paint, the brown paint, or should I have just left it alone? I glued up another panel off camera in the same way that I made the first panel, and this panel is going to make the drawers of the cabinet. And the way that I make drawers is I first just make one big drawer and then cut that into smaller drawers. So right now I'm just cutting out the four sides of the big drawer. And before I glue these four sides together, I'm going to use my biscuit joiner, again, this time to cut some slots so that I can spline together all four sides of this drawer and get them all perfectly aligned with some aluminum splines. Now that the glue's dried, now I just have to divide this big drawer into 3 smaller drawers at the table saw. Now I'm going to reinforce the corners of each of these drawers with some metal rings. And I actually tried doing something like this last year, but I couldn't get it to work because I couldn't find any metal pipe that quite fit. And you have to match 2 things. You have to match the diameter of the hole saw bit that you're using and also the kerf of the hole saw bit that you're using. And that's kind of very hard to find a metal pipe that meets both of those size requirements. But here's what I have found this year. Okay, so 1-inch aluminum tubing, whatever reason, that does not work. But what does work is 3/4-inch aluminum tubing, and 3/4-inch EMT conduit works, and 1-inch EMT conduit works as well. I don't know why that is, but use that as you will, and probably do some of your own experimenting if you want to try something like this, and see what works for you. But anyways, like you just saw, I just used that jig to evenly space out and get all those hole saw cuts where I want them to be. And I drilled those all out, and now I'm filling in all those holes with some aluminum pipe, 3/4-inch aluminum pipe, and then I'm cutting it flush with my oscillating tool. And usually these aluminum rings would add a lot more strength and kind of act as like a dovetail alternative. But you see, I didn't think this all the way through, and those aluminum splines that I placed in earlier kind of get in the way and don't allow the rings to hold on to as much wood as I would have liked. I'm going to paint the front of the drawers all black, and then while that dries, I'm going to start working on making the drawer fronts. These sections of 2x4 were pretty rough, but that's alright because I didn't want the drawer fronts to be this thick anyways. So I milled them down quite a bit at the table saw and even passed them through my planer a couple of times to get them down to about 7/8 of an inch. And then I brought all the drawer fronts back to the miter saw, and I'm just going to make a bunch of shallow cuts at 30 degrees, move the miter saw over to 30 degrees in the other direction, and repeat the process. And you can't see it, but I'm actually following a line so I can move over the workpiece just the right amount between each cut so that I have, equal distance between each cut. And then I'll end up with this checkered pattern that you can see on each of these drawer fronts. And then to add some contrast, I'm going to paint over all these drawer fronts, sand it all off, and then that's just going to leave all the lines black. Before I stain and finish these drawer fronts, I just have to do a little bit of final shaping. Next I'm going to make the drawer pulls, and the drawer pulls are going to be made out of some more aluminum, so I'm cutting off a piece that I can work with the table saw, and then I'm going to use my hole saw to cut these to shape. And these drawer pulls have to fit inside the slot a biscuit joiner makes, so that's why they have to be this specific shape. I cut the slot for the drawer pulls a little bit too deep, which is fine. I just have to cut off the excess that's sticking out now from the drawer pulls. And then I'm just going to attach the drawer fronts with some screws. And for the drawer bottoms, a piece of plywood would be a lot easier. I didn't have any thin plywood on hand, so I'm just going to cut off some more sections of 2x4, cut those into strips, and then fit those into place. There's going to be a lot of gaps in the drawer bottom if I don't plane down these strips. And luckily, this company called Tersa Knives sent me this rally plane that they sell, and it is really cool. So full disclosure, they did send me this plane for free, but I am under no obligation to say anything other than my true opinion on it. And I don't want to steer anybody wrong or, oversell this at all. So if I change my mind or I notice anything wrong about it later on, I'll let you guys know. But as of now, this is the best plane I have ever used. I love this, and I'm probably going to buy some of the other rally stuff that they sell. They have like a rally chisel set. That's pretty cool too. But basically, what's so cool about these planes is that you don't need to sharpen them. So they have these little razor blades that you can flip over when they get dull and use the other side. Or when both sides are dull, you just get a new razor blade. They sell like packs of razor blades that you can switch them out. And they're super easy to switch out, and the plane itself is just really easy to use. So like I said, it's really easy to change the blades. It only took me like 30 seconds. And it's really easy to change the depth of cut. You just use that little red lever and push that down for a deeper cut. And it's even got a QR code on the handle that sends you to their website on how to use their products. So it's really user friendly. So if you're like a DIYer or just someone that wants a plane that works straight out the box, I think this is a great buy. A lot of people take great pride in knowing how to sharpen and use their antique hand planes, and more power to you. That's great. I don't really enjoy the sharpening process, so I really like this plane. If you want a plane like this, you can go to tersa-knives.com and use code Wright10 for 10% off your rally plane. Okay, now back to the video. I used the plane and I flattened out all the rest of the strips and then fit those into place into each of the drawer bottoms. I screwed up and cut some of these strips to the wrong length. So now there's gaps. And so to cover up those gaps, I just cut some little piece of trim. This is not a great solution. It looks kind of dumb, but it's what I'm going with for right now. Maybe if I get a sheet of plywood later, I can fill in these drawer bottoms with something better. Last step of making these drawers, I'm just going to cut a little groove in the bottom of each of the drawers that the drawer slides can fit into and slide in and out of.